Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we are diving deep into a rapidly developing, high-stakes situation that could fundamentally rewrite the entire landscape of the National Football League. Before we unpack this unbelievable playbook, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video, and seriously consider becoming a channel member to support what we do here. Because the story we're exploring in today's explainer, well, it changes absolutely everything. You see, while millions of fans were entirely focused on the gridiron, a multi-billion-dollar boardroom blitz was unfolding right in the shadows. We are talking about a ruthless, calculated game of four-dimensional chess being played by the Chicago Bears front office. And once you see how they did it, you'll realize the game is being played on a completely different level. To truly understand the sheer gravity of this power play, we have to step away from the turf and look at the actual battleground. Springfield, Illinois. The legislative session is bleeding out, ticking down toward a hard May 31st adjournment deadline. Now, lawmakers had already moved a bill through the House months earlier. It was called HB 910. And honestly, it was a completely routine, standard piece of economic development legislation. It had literally been sitting on the back burner for more than 3 years. It was quiet, it was predictable, nobody was paying attention to it. Until the Chicago Bears arrived. They didn't just show up with a fancy stadium proposal or some architectural renderings. They showed up with a highly calculated, aggressive legislative framework. In a midnight maneuver that caught almost everyone off guard, a massive overhaul was introduced that completely mutated the entire DNA of the bill.
$5 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. When people see an ambition that incredibly massive, they immediately jump to conclusions, right? They assume the team is demanding a giant pile of public cash. They assume it's the classic, age-old NFL shakedown, a billionaire owner demanding a blank check from taxpayers to build a shiny new concrete palace. But that assumption misses the point entirely. George McCaskey and team president Kevin Warren didn't walk into Springfield begging for a check. In fact, the franchise had already committed roughly $2 billion of its own money toward this enclosed mega facility in Arlington Heights. They didn't want construction cash. That's too short term. They were hunting for something far more powerful and far, far more permanent. What they did was treat the legislative calendar exactly the way a seasoned elite quarterback treats a dying play clock. Maximum pressure, absolute minimum time for the defense to adjust. Let me walk you through this crazy sequence of events. HB 910 was just sitting there, totally idle. Suddenly, a completely revamped version is filed overnight. Boom! It pushes through committee on a lightning-fast 15-5 vote. Then, on the exact same night, April 22nd, it hits the full House floor and passes 78-32. It was a complete blindside. A floor amendment replaced everything after the enacting clause, expanding the bill to roughly 10 times its original length. The defense, in this case the opposing lawmakers and local watchdogs, they were completely caught flat-footed. By the time they realized what the play was, the Bears were already in the end zone.
What we are witnessing here is a total, fundamental evolution in the stadium model. It is a massive paradigm shift. The old way of doing business in sports was simple: give us cash to build our stadium. But the new objective, the new gold standard, absolute 40-year tax certainty. The Chicago Bears front office realized something crucial. A one-time cash injection from the state, no matter how big, is temporary. It dries up. What they truly needed was to build a financial fortress. They wanted a structure that outlives every future governor, outlasts every future legislature, and completely survives every future economic budget crisis. They wanted to permanently detach their financial future from the unpredictable, messy whims of state politics. So what is the secret weapon they used to achieve this? It's called a pilot framework. That stands for payment in lieu of taxes. Now listen closely, because this isn't just about skipping out on taxes entirely. It's about ultimate control. A pilot structure allows a massive mega project to completely bypass the traditional fluctuating annual property tax assessments. You know, the ones that go up and down based on the market? Instead, they get to negotiate a predictable, locked-in, flat bill with surrounding taxing bodies for decades. Imagine for a second running a multi-billion-dollar business and knowing your exact to-the-penny operational overhead for the next 40 years, without any annual local budget process ever being able to touch it. That level of total, unshakable financial predictability is the ultimate safeguard. To understand how they get this, you have to look at how the state's mega project designation operates. It's built on a tiered system. Step 1, if you invest at least $100 million into the state, you can lock in your tax payments for 25 years. Step 2, a $500 million investment buys you 30 years of total certainty. But then there is Step 3.
Because the Bears' comprehensive proposal, which was backed by deep analysis from HR&A advisors, absolutely shattered the $1 billion threshold, pushing past $5 billion total, they positioned themselves at the very top of the mountain. They proposed the right to lock down state-sanctioned tax certainty for up to 4 decades. And get this, with even more years potentially available for environmental remediation. 40 years of absolute, untouchable control. But look, to push a deal this utterly massive through the legislature literally overnight, you need a political sweetener. You have to give them a reason to say yes. The compromise? 50% of all those pilot receipts are redirected away from the project itself, flowing instead toward property tax relief. Let's break that pie down further. 60% of that half, which equals 30% of the total pie, goes directly to rebates for local residential homeowners in the surrounding taxing districts. The rest feeds the state's property tax relief fund. To seal the deal, the bill even added a 7-year sunset clause and outright banned data centers from using the incentives. It was brilliant. They essentially turned a massive corporate incentive into a homeowner relief program just to secure the votes before anyone could blink. However, we have to talk about the massive hidden cost here. Redirecting half of that money toward property tax rebates sounds incredibly generous on paper. I mean, who doesn't love property tax relief, right? But here is the brutal reality. Every single dollar flowing back into the pockets of homeowners is a dollar that is not flowing to the surrounding infrastructure. The local taxing bodies in the Arlington Heights area, the schools, the fire departments, the public works, are now entirely stripped of their funding flexibility. They are trapped. They are operating under a 40-year financial cage that they didn't design, built entirely around a private mega project that they didn't officially request. The ripple effect of this deal essentially strangles the surrounding municipalities for a generation. The sheer, unprecedented scale of this maneuver is staggering. As one analyst aptly described it, this is, quote, a financial fortress disguised as a sports bill. Critics are incredibly vocal about this. They argue that the Bears didn't just hire a few slick lobbyists to push an agenda. No, they leveraged their immense cultural and financial influence to completely rebuild the foundation of an existing economic development law around a single private football franchise's timeline. In the eyes of those opposing the deal, the team didn't just play the game. They forced the entire state of Illinois to bend to their will. And honestly, this brings us to the broader, far more terrifying impact. This is no longer just a Chicago Bears story. It sets a terrifying new precedent. By positioning themselves as the ultimate, irreplaceable anchor tenant, the franchise has created a definitive blueprint. Lawmakers and financial watchdogs across the country are terrified because this proves that mega franchises across the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball can actively leverage legislative deadlines to extract multi-decade tax frameworks that completely outlast the political will of any single administration. Every billionaire owner in America is watching this unfold, taking notes on exactly how to squeeze their own local state houses. But the clock is bleeding out. Remember that dying play clock we talked about earlier, the one the Bears used to rush the House? Well, it cuts both ways. The House passed the bill on April 22nd. The Senate returned to session on April 28th. But then, the bill was referred to the Senate Assignments Committee, and they have sat on it ever since. They haven't moved an inch. It's a total legislative standoff. And today is May 31st, the absolute hard adjournment deadline for the legislative session. The clock is at 00. We are standing on the literal brink of total collapse. If the Senate stalls past today's midnight deadline without getting Governor J.B. Pritzker's official blessing, this entire multi-billion-dollar masterpiece of a framework completely disintegrates. The Bears have publicly signaled they still need even more changes to make Arlington Heights feasible, meaning the negotiation window is practically non-existent right now. If midnight strikes and no deal is reached, the slate is wiped entirely clean. All that work, gone. They will have to restart from absolute zero in a future session facing entirely different and potentially far more hostile political dynamics. The stakes literally could not be higher. But here is the catch. Here is where the reality of football collides with the fantasy of the boardroom. While the front office plays this high-stakes game of political chess in Springfield, the brutal physical reality of the gridiron waits for no one. A $5 billion financial fortress is completely useless if the product on the field fails. The team has to justify the billions being negotiated off the field with wins on it. And right now, no single player embodies that immense pressure cooker more than second-year wideout Luther Burden III, who recently stared down reporters and told them flat out, "I am who I say I am, the guy." Let's break down Burden's 2026 crucible, because the tension here is absolutely palpable. Drafted 39th overall in the second round of the 2025 draft, Burden was originally brought in for depth, but everything changed on March 11th when the Bears made the shocking, league-altering decision to trade superstar DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills.
Overnight, a massive void opened up. Now the spotlight is blinding. Burden has to step up and perform opposite Rome Odunze. He has to earn the absolute unwavering trust of franchise quarterback Caleb Williams. And perhaps most daunting of all, he's carrying the immense, very public weight of offensive coordinator Ben Johnson's expectations. Johnson recently went on record saying he is, quote, buying Luther Burden's stock right now, and praised him as being extremely coachable. That is a heavy crown to wear. The stats tell a story of unfulfilled potential that absolutely must detonate into greatness this year. 652. That is the number of receiving yards Burden posted as a rookie across 15 games. He pulled in 47 catches, 2 touchdowns, and added 223 kickoff return yards. Look, those are solid rookie numbers. But solid doesn't pay for a $5 billion mega project. Burden has been grinding through OTAs, isolating himself, trying to get bigger, faster, and more intimate with the playbook. To justify the financial empire being built in Arlington Heights, Burden cannot just be a good secondary receiver. He must evolve into Caleb Williams' ultimate, undeniable weapon on the field. The boardroom demands a multi-decade dynasty. The field requires execution on every single snap.
So here we are. 2 very different, yet completely intertwined clocks are ticking down. The midnight deadline in Springfield and the rapidly approaching, unforgiven crucible of the 2026 NFL season. I really want to hear from you guys on this one. Is this 40-year tax lock smart economic development that secures a historic franchise's future, or is it a dangerous, ruthless new playbook for billionaires to hold cities hostage? Drop your take in the comments below right now. Make sure you like this explainers, subscribe to NFL Nexus, and hit that join button to become a member, because whether this massive bill passes tonight or collapses into dust at midnight, this story is far from over. I'll see you in the next one.